right, we are in our series, The Cure, Healing an Epidemic of Loneliness. We looked at in week one, we said that the research is out there, the science, the data is out there, that loneliness is affecting more generations, every generation, and more people than ever before. Whereas loneliness maybe was something that people struggled with as they got older and people around them passed away, we're seeing loneliness at every age and stage. And in our society where we are incredibly digitally connected, we're finding that is not necessarily healing loneliness. It could actually be causing it more. And so we're looking at the very healing aspect and looking at the cure for this idea of loneliness. And maybe you're feeling that. Maybe you're feeling that you're missing the full life that God has for you, the full life that you would like to live, because you are struggling with loneliness. You feel on an island, you feel isolated. And so as we talk about this, we wanted to kind of clear a few things. Week one, I want to review them really quickly as we jump into today's specific aspect of the healing that we're looking at. We said that loneliness isn't just being alone or being isolated, right? You can have people in your life and still be lonely, and you can be alone and not necessarily be struggling with loneliness. And we said for our purposes, our running definition, loneliness is simply this. It is the deep sense of dread at the persistent idea that you have no one and you are no one. Now, maybe this time of social distancing has increased this in you. Maybe you've been trying to search out how do you connect in this time of being disconnected personally. And I think we as human beings are built for, we are made for meaningful person-to-person connection. And maybe in this time of social distancing, it's getting worse for you. Maybe this isn't an area that you struggle in, but today you could be a healing presence for some people. But we said that loneliness, the thing that begins to heal this, the thing that the cure is found in this word called vulnerability. And it's the willingness to be vulnerable. And we said there's 3 levels of vulnerability, 3 levels of relationships within which we need to be vulnerable. And we said that is community, companionship, and communion. Think of them as concentric circles where your community is all those groups that maybe you belong to that are within the community. Maybe it's your neighborhood, or maybe you have community within some sub-community in downtown. Maybe you're connected to the LGBTQ community or the arts community or some local business community, or you have your meetup group, or maybe Downtown Faith is your community, and you have this community, these are your friends, but then when you go in a little bit, you kind of get to this companionship, right? Those people that are closer than others, and we're going to talk about that one today. And then we said there's this core relationship with which to be vulnerable, that is this communion with God, this idea that we are in relationship, we are present to God, we are vulnerable, we are open to be known and cared for, and to know and care for with God. And we said that the communion isn't just this one time a week ritual or one time a month ritual that maybe so many people experience within their church tradition, but that ritual is merely a picture of this thing we want all the time, this deep relationship with the divine. And we said that the cure for loneliness isn't necessarily people, but it's presence. It's being present to those people at those levels. And we looked at communion last week, and we said that communion is faith plus vulnerability over time. And we said that our commitment to practicing communion will determine our experience of divine presence. And the idea that we have to have these practices, these disciplines in our life that lead us to spend time with God. And we asked the question, what are those practices in your life? What are those practices for you that connect you to God? And we put out a 5-day challenge. I hope that went well for you this week, that you found something that you could do 5 days in a row that would spend a little bit of time connecting with God and reflecting on your life, because those practices are crucial to growing in that relationship, and it takes time, as so many things do. And then this week we're going to talk about companionship. And this is intimacy plus vulnerability over time. And all of these aspects take time. I don't want to miss that. It's not immediate. And especially if intimacy is immediate, it tends to be manipulative. We have to watch out for that. And I think that for many of us, this is the level at which maybe we struggle with the most. Right? Maybe you have connection to God. Maybe you have connection to broader communities. You have friends in your life, but those deep relationships, those companions, the people with which to be intimate maybe are missing in your life, and maybe quarantine time and social distancing has highlighted that in your life. And when I say intimacy, many of us immediately go to sexual intimacy, which can be an aspect of intimacy, but is not necessarily directly related to it. I grew up with a best friend that I had since I was born, really, as far as back as I can remember. And this friend that was my partner in life. He was my companion. He was the person that I went to for everything. He knew every detail of my life, even more so than family. And so it's not always necessarily sexual. Intimacy can happen in a lot of other ways. But for you, maybe that feeling, the thing that is missing is a spouse, a partner in life romantically and in other aspects. And maybe it is. Maybe it's a close friend. You just don't have close friends. Maybe you had close friends where you were, and then as you moved to Las Vegas, you don't have that. Or maybe you grew up here in Las Vegas and people are in and out, and you've had close friends, you tried to be intimate, and you tried to be vulnerable, and then they leave. And we've certainly seen that in our own life and in the life of our family. But this intimacy and vulnerability over time is incredibly important, and intimacy and vulnerability are directly connected. Look how Brene Brown in her book Daring Greatly says. She says, we have to be able to talk about how we feel, what we need and desire. And we have to be able to listen with an open heart and open mind. There is no intimacy without vulnerability. These things are connected. And she says that we have to have those people with which we can be intimate with. And I know what you're thinking, because as I've been looking into this all week and I really struggled putting this content together, I'm just be honest with you. Because of this right here. Intimacy invites belonging and betrayal, bonding and backstabbing. But it's worth it. When we open ourselves up to being known and cared for, and we bring people in, or we try to bring people into this smaller group of people with which to be intimate, with which to be true friends and partners in life, that opens us up to this wonderful thing of belonging, right? And to this bonding, but it also opens us up to betrayal and backstabbing. That's what it invites when we are close with people, which is why we encourage you, one of our core values here at Downtown Faith is to commit courageously. We know that it's difficult, and we are asking people to be brave. And to be brave, why? So that we can heal and that we can be healthy in these areas. That maybe you've experienced a hurt that you feel like no one else can understand. Maybe you've been there. Maybe that is the reason why you are shut off and loneliness has crept into your heart and into your mind and into your soul, is because you got hurt and you said, I'm never doing that again, because when I do it, it invites backstabbing and it invites betrayal, and it's hurting me. But I want to challenge you today to commit courageously to your own healing and to your own health relationally. And to commit courageously to that healing. And so we're going to look at the life of Jesus, because as we look through this, we said that Jesus kind of models these three levels of vulnerability, these three levels of relationship for us. And certainly he had a relationship with the divine that he referred to as Father, and they were one and they were connected. But we also see that Jesus did this. Jesus, while he had his 12 followers, and many of us know about, he had the 12 disciples, and then he had this group of women that actually funded this ministry and were in total partnership with this as well. So he had this community, but he also had these companions where he actually he went greater, he went further with a few. That he took 3 of these guys, and I would even say one of these women, and he brought them in closer to his life. He showed them more than he showed everyone else. He invested time into them. He chose to go further with a few. And there's a great example of this. Jesus goes up onto a mountain to pray. We looked at last week how often he did that. And this one time he invites Peter, James, and John, these 3 that he was kind of taking further, and he invites them to the mountain, and they're praying, and they actually fall asleep. Have you ever prayed so long or at a time where you just ended up falling asleep? So Jesus is praying over here, and they pray, but they fall asleep, and they wake up to this supernatural moment in the life of Jesus. It's a moment that Jesus says, don't even share this with other people. And Luke records this. He said they didn't share it until after Jesus had rose from the dead. Until later, they didn't tell anybody about this experience, but they had this experience, and Peter acknowledges, hey, it's good for us to be here. He said, this is an important distinction, and this is an important moment in the life of Jesus, and they were there for it. He showed them something that he didn't even show anyone else, and he didn't even want them to tell anyone else until later. So let's look at these 3 guys and the relationship to Jesus, and Jesus, how he related to them. And let's see if we can pull some lessons out about our own healing and the reason why it's worth it to commit courageously to an intimate and vulnerable relationships, and to try and grow and go deeper with our friendships. First off, companionship is an opportunity for family. And we all know about family, right? And at a level, we're born, most of us, into a family with which we become intimate, right? Like they know us and we know them, and time sometimes bonds that, and time sometimes, some of the deepest betrayals and hurt come from our family because they know us, and maybe they do us wrong, and maybe that's the hurt that has kept you from really bonding with other people in a deep way. But there's the family that we don't choose, and then there's the family that we choose. Maybe you know this. Maybe you have those people in your life that are closer than family. They've become more important to you than even your own flesh and blood. And we are actually going to see this in the life of Jesus. Jesus talks about it in several places, that his family isn't necessarily his brothers over here. It's these brothers that are right here, these friends that are here. And he does this thing. Jesus is on the cross. He's been tortured. He's been tried illegally. He's been tortured. He's been hung on this death apparatus, and he's there, and the 12 are gone, and only one remains. There's 3 women, his mom, and we're going to see a few others, and then this one disciple, this one follower, one of the 3 that are really close to him remains. And look what Jesus does. I think it's incredibly important. It says, standing near the cross were Jesus' mother and his mother's sister, so his aunt, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. There's 3 Marys there, so you had to kind of distinguish these Marys. And we know that Mary Magdalene was probably the woman that he was closest to in that group of women followers. And it says, when Jesus saw his mother standing there beside the disciple he loved, this is how John refers to himself in his account, he said to her, "Dear woman, here is your son." And he said to this disciple, "Here is your mother." And from then on, this disciple took her into his home. We know that Jesus had brothers. And yet Jesus looked at this follower, this companion, this person that he had been, who was known as like this person that he loved, right? Like this deep, abiding relationship. And he said, this is family. This guy here is family. And from that moment on, his mom was cared for by this disciple, by this follower. And it was this family that we choose. And I encourage you, part of the healing process of loneliness is to find those people strategically that you make your family, that you choose. Again, this could be a spouse, right? Isn't that what a spouse, a life partner becomes, right? This family that you choose to start a different family, a connected but also unique family with. It's one of the powerful things about marriage is that this new family that's never existed before is now going to exist. Maybe that's your struggle, finding that person. You feel alone because you don't have that intimate connection. I want to encourage you. The healing could be in that spouse, but it also could just be in finding friends that you can deeply connect to, and inviting people into your life. And this is a tough process. Sometimes you're in that wondering, and there's this curiosity of, do me and this person connect? Will they stay with me? Will they hurt me? Is this inviting something that they want? And there's so many questions, and there's so many things around it, which is why we have to commit courageously. But I want to encourage you that companionship is an opportunity for family. Not just the family we're born into, but the family that we choose, and this other family that we can have. And we see that in the life of Jesus. But companionship is also an opportunity for forgiveness. So one of these guys, Peter, and the reason he's not there at the cross is because earlier he was with Jesus, and he actually denied that he was friends with, that he was a follower of, that he even knew Jesus. And he does this 3 times, and Jesus predicted that he would do this. Jesus tells him, this is what's going to happen. But imagine the betrayal. I mean, this was the guy that Jesus was probably closest to out of all of the leaders that were surrounding him. And yet Jesus knew, even though we're super close, even though I've taught you and shown you a lot, you're going to betray me. You're going to leave me. And this is exactly what happens. Peter denies that he knows him. So then Jesus, he's killed, and he raises from the dead 3 days later. And we have this story where he meets these disciples. And when Peter realizes it's him, he jumps out of the boat that they're fishing in, and he comes and meets Jesus on the shore. And Jesus has this fish breakfast with his disciples. And you can imagine the anxiety in Peter, right? Like he loves Jesus, but he knows the last thing I did was betray my friend. The last thing I did was hurt this man that I had followed for these years and had given my life to. But when you have those people that are close, those real companions, real partners in life, it's an opportunity for forgiveness, because forgiveness matters. Forgiveness is a way to mirror the grace that we wish to receive. And it's an opportunity to actually bond that relationship and bond the intimacy and the vulnerability through forgiveness. Look at what it says. It says, a 3rd time Jesus asks him, they're sitting there on the beach eating this fish breakfast. Jesus says, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a 3rd time. Like, I already answered this and you keep asking me, but he seems he asks him once for every time he denied him. He said, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus said, then feed my sheep. And he gives him this responsibility. He gives him this calling on his life where he says, listen, it's not over because you denied me. I forgive you. Our relationship is here, and I'm actually going to give you the care of my flock, these people, my followers, this thing that would be known as the church. It's the thing that we're even doing here. And he says, Peter, I want you to lead that. I want you to care for these people. I want you to know them. I forgive you. And it's huge, and it also takes us to our next one. Companionship is an opportunity for future, for a legacy, right? It's the people that are closest to us with which we have the longest lasting legacy, the most meaningful legacy. You see, Peter would become the first leader of this thing known as the church that now is all over the world. And it's, people are meeting virtually, but all over the world, people are connecting with these people that they met at this thing called the church. And Peter would be this first leader. He would kind of step out on faith and continue the work of Jesus. And he would have this major legacy. John would become a prominent church leader and a writer of much of the New Testament. He wrote one of the gospel accounts of Jesus. He wrote 3 letters to the early churches, and then he wrote the book of Revelation. And he would become this prominent leader. He was like the first Christian mystic. And he has this legacy that even now people are reading his writings and people are following the way that he followed Jesus even after the death of Jesus. And we don't know much historically about James, not James the brother of Jesus, but James the brother of John, who was in this group of 3. But we do know that he was one of the first martyrs. And martyrs tend to leave a legacy. He was one of the first people killed for following Jesus and the way of Jesus. And His story was so powerful, it's said that the jailer who spent time with him in the prison he was kept in before he was killed actually became a follower of Jesus and had his head chopped off with James. You see, being close to Jesus and being kind of centered in that relationship with Jesus gave these men a legacy they would have never had. They were poor fishermen from an oppressed group of people. They were nobodies. And yet they have this massive legacy because of their closeness and their partnership with Jesus. And it is those people that we are closest to that we will have the longest lasting legacy. The idea of legacy and future was one of the things that pulled me into moved me from, I don't really want to have kids to, I think I'm absolutely supposed to have kids. And it was a very emotional moment for me because it was this idea of, no, I'm going to pass on this legacy and this life and this name and this family to other people with which I will be close and connected to. Richard Rohr says it this way in his book, Falling Upward. You must find at least one true mirror that reveals your inner, deepest, and yes, divine image. This is why intimate moments are often mirroring moments of beautiful mutual receptivity, and why such intimacy heals us deeply. You see, the very thing, intimacy, that hurt you is the very same thing that can also heal you. But we have to commit courageously to do that. We have to commit courageously to have this mirror gaze, the gaze of one soul to another. It takes courage. It doesn't just happen, but it is where healing can happen in our lives, and certainly healing this epidemic of loneliness in our culture and in our communities. And my hope is today that you will begin to commit courageously to the healing that companionship offers and that intimacy and vulnerability over time offers. But I also want to give a couple practical tips as maybe you pursue this with your life, as you open yourself up to being known and cared for and caring and knowing others at a deep level. I want to kind of put a couple just tips, practical things that I think we can learn from and we can take with us as we heal. And the first one is this: postpone immediate gratification for future satisfaction. This is the idea of saying no to the thing you really want now for the thing you really want. Saying no to the thing you really want now to the thing that you really want. Maybe the thing you really want is a lasting life partnership with a spouse. Maybe there's some things in your life now, some immediate gratification that you need to say no to prepare your heart, your mind, your soul, your spirit, your emotions for that partnership, for that marriage. That thing that you really want, that deep sense of connection. Because there's a lot of counterfeits out there, counterfeit connection. That if we can postpone immediate gratification for future satisfaction, the thing that we really want, I think that helps us get there in a healthier way. And then also, more butterflies, less lightning bolts. This is a big one when it comes to friendships. I'm not talking about butterflies, like, ooh, that person that makes me feel a certain way. No, I'm talking about lightning bolts would be these intense moments of connection, right? Versus these lasting moments of connection, right? The people in your life, maybe the friends or the girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, that the people that make you just feel amazing, and it's like this one night of just, I feel this connection, but then it doesn't happen anymore, or you lose it, or it was what it was in that moment, and it's nothing else. Or maybe it happens once every other year. I connect with this person, it's like boom, 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 and it's like, no, the thing you need is more of those lasting moments of connection. So, more butterflies, less lightning bolts, right? Because it's the butterflies that are that sustained connection, that thing that we really, really want, that true companionship, the people where we can spend those lasting moments, those beautiful moments with. But it's difficult because intimacy invites belonging and betrayal, bonding and backstabbing. But I'll tell you this, it's worth it. And my hope is that you'll commit courageously and you'll step out and you'll begin to heal, and that we will all begin to heal through real intimacy and vulnerability over time, this companionship that we will open ourselves up to being known and cared for, to a select few, and to go deeper with them in our own healing.